Joining me now is retired Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman. He's the former director for European Affairs for the National Security Council and a senior advisor to Vote Vets, and the author of the book, Here Right Matters, An American Story. Thank you for joining me today. For months, there's been reporting that a potential prisoner swap focuses on Griner and Viktor Bout, and now word that Griner has been moved to one of Russia's notorious penal colonies. What do you think this means for the chances of getting her home?
Just the move itself doesn't necessarily mean that much. I think the fact is that the Russians are ratcheting up the stakes, putting some additional pressure. The conditions at the penal colony are going to be significantly worse, but she'll still be segregated and watched over carefully because she's a bargaining chip. She's a hostage, and the Russians are looking to extract as much as they can for this prisoner exchange. I mean, before this war, the idea of transferring Viktor Bout for anybody was going to be a no-brainer. The Russians were pressing hard to repatriate this criminal. Now they want more. They think that there's a pressure on the Biden administration to give up more. And again, she's not a person there. She's a bargaining chip, unfortunately. And the Russians are going to extract as much as they can and make this as costly as possible. And these are not decisions that are being taken at any level below, the top tier leadership. Putin and his inner circle. This is not the justice system kind of operating with a free hand and moving folks around for long-term sentences. This is Putin and his thugs playing their version of diplomacy.
And this comes here in the States. The Republicans are set to control the House of Representatives this session. One of the potential next speakers, Kevin McCarthy, has said that the Republicans in charge, there will not be, quote, a free blank check for Ukraine. And here, several House Republicans have said in recent days, take a listen.
The days of endless cash and military materiel to Ukraine are numbered. I will not vote for one more dollar to Ukraine. I will not vote for one more piece of materiel to Ukraine.
With the money we've sent to Ukraine, we could have already secured our border, but we're not doing that. I think the American people and the taxpayers of this country deserve to know why the Biden administration and this Congress is so interested in funding the protection of Ukraine's border and not the protection of our border. I can tell you right now, my district, Georgia 14, is not interested in continuing to fund a war in Ukraine and defending Ukraine's border while our border is being invaded every single day. We want to audit Ukraine.
Lieutenant Colonel, there's so much to unpack there on why the Republicans don't understand the geopolitical importance of safeguarding Ukraine. And we'll talk about this idea that Putin is invading a democratic country and sovereignty and what would mean if Ukraine were to fall. So those are two very extreme voices. But it does tell you about the future American support for Ukraine under the GOP rule in the U.S. Congress. Can you talk a bit about the shift and what counsel you would have in private to Kevin McCarthy, if you could?
Sure. So let's first start with the premise that they do understand the importance of supporting Ukraine, but they don't care. They don't care about U.S. national security in this case because they could score political points. And those political points are not even necessarily at the base. Those political points are with Trump. Trump has a deep animus against Ukraine. They're trying to ingratiate and curry favor with Trump. And if it means jeopardizing U.S. national security, it is not below these people to do so. So I think in many cases, Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe not. I think Matt Gaetz is, he's got an IQ point higher or so. I think many of these folks do understand the importance of Ukraine, but there also is a deeper buy-in to this notion that Russia, as an authoritarian, tyrannical, barbarous regime, is not the bad guy. Democracy is the bad guy. Freedom-loving Ukrainians that have a lot in common with the U.S. and, frankly, the way our country emerged. Those are the enemies now for a Republican administration that's tyranny curious. So what I would offer to McCarthy as the incoming majority leader is that there are bigger things in play than frankly scoring points with a doomed re-election campaign by Donald Trump. There's something to be said about doing what you swore to do, which is support the Constitution of the United States. I would actually offer in this window that there's a lame duck Congress that he should not object to the passage of another appropriation. I think the White House is looking to pass about $37 billion, and that he should quietly let that pass without much of a hiccup and not make a big stink about it. I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to look to score points, but it would be great for him to not have to take ownership of another appropriation, which is likely to come anyway. I think, he might pass another appropriation for Ukraine just because the margins are so thin. But he should let this pass under the lame duck session and doesn't have to worry about it. He doesn't have to take the heat from his fringe far-right Republicans.
I think that is wise counsel. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you for your patriotism. You were one of the very first to actually sound the alarm and testify before Congress on the dangers of Donald Trump. Thank you for continuing to sound that alarm.